Alrighty, welcome back YouTube. We are here. I am Angli at Next, and we are going to do some updated content for you today. Updating the builds that I have made for the newest set of mods. These will obviously get a refresher towards the end of the month because we're getting a new mod on Xbox going into mod 18, but with mod 16 and 17 the builds that I've had previously are no longer relevant because of the way that they changed the game, changed the classes, everything like that. So we're going to be going over the control wizard today, and let's just jump right in. Alright, so first things first, we are going to cover the AoE portions of the new setups. At the start of mod 16, Thom was the build to play. Now that they have changed the way that Smolder works, it is not so much anymore. Thom still really works well if you're running, like say you're running your MEs, your Master Expeditions by yourself, just because those Smolder ticks usually burn things down quicker than the Arcanist AoE, at least in my opinion. Now, if you're going to be running dungeons, Arcanist AoE is going to be the best because it is the burstiest, and usually you can get the damage out quicker before everybody else kills the stuff, whereas with Thom you have to wait for those dots to do their work. The reason why I say doing it solo with Thom is because with Arcanist, basically if you don't kill everything when you run through your encounter powers, you're going to be sitting there for 5 to 7 seconds literally just casting Ray of Frost, whereas with Thom you're going to have those Smolder ticks rolling, so then you only have about 2 seconds of Ray of Frost time when running by yourself. But obviously that's a little slow, a little bit too slow for running dungeons, so Arcanist is the way. So we'll go over that here. So to start off, we'll just cover some gear. Some of the gear is still the same as it was in my last video, but there is some generalized updates as far as with the new gear. Obviously you can see that I'm not 100% optimized because I'm not 27k, but this is the stuff that works for me, and just still building up enchantments and things as well. So first things first, you're really just looking for stats that you need to get to your caps, because for Tower of the Mad Mage or Thom, about 80 for everything is going to be your cap. So 80 for defense, 80 for armor pen, 80 for crit, 80 for accuracy, 80 for critical avoidance. But for like tanks and healers, you want to be somewhere between 80 and 95 for your critical avoidance, and then having a bare minimum of like 325,000 HP, which sounds astronomical, but I really did it with relative ease, going from about 220 up to, I think I'm at 330. I added that in like 2 seconds. It wasn't hard. That was just literally swapping enchants around, and then what I had to do is just rebalance because of I had Azures in my defense slot, so I had to swap Azures out to put in Radiance, but that also dropped my defense on my page, so then on the back page I added some defense in to put me at the cap. So with these pieces, the main thing that you're looking for is the equip bonus, the Undermountain Hunter for the head, because you're getting the 5% increased damage in Undermountain, which most of the stuff that we're going to be doing in these mods is going to be in Undermountain, because you're going to be doing your MEs, you're going to be doing Loam, you're going to be doing Tower of the Mad Mage. That's the biggest things. Now, there are other helmets that you can put on, but most of the time, I don't know of anybody that gets super sweaty about taking that off when they're in other places. I mean, you could use like the Mermaid Soup Bowl, which just gives you 5%, or it gives you a stack of damage when you kill a target. It has a long cooldown, so it's not optimal. I really don't switch, I just leave this on. But the times that I'm outside of Undermountain, not having that 5% damage because most areas everywhere else in Neverwinter are requirements of stats is so much lower, you're not gonna notice not having that 5%. So I just leave that on. As of right now, I'm still running the Hags Rags for mod 14, just because of the range powers dealing 3% more damage. And then, but there are rings and things that you can get that do that. So if you do get those rings, and these powers, the equip bonuses only stack twice. So if you find rings that have those on it, swap the Hags Rags out for something else, like something like I think it's the Ebony Raid Curious, that when you heal or damage an enemy for more than 15% of your health, it gives you a stack of power. So that would be the best option if you had those rings. And then same with the Terra Grips. Like if you have rings that make your encounter powers do more damage, you can take the Terra Grips off, get something with better stats on it. The Alabaster set is the second best in slot right now, kind of. It's one of those sets that it's like, do you really want to beat your head against the wall and get the Watcher set? Do you have Lair of the Mad Mage on farm so that you can get your Burnish set? Or do you step up and do you have Tom on Tower of the Mad Mage on farm to where you can get the Lionheart set? Obviously, Lionheart set is going to be the best because it's basically like the updated Primal. So whenever you get healed or deal damage for more than 15% of your life, you have 10 or 5 or 10% increased outgoing healing and outgoing damage. But these are farmable through doing Master Expeditions or MEs. Higher damage as far as the weapon goes than any of the weapons that we've seen before. And now obviously moving forward, like those other 2 or 3 sets that I've said are going to be better. The Lionheart set has a little bit higher damage, and obviously the set bonus is really, really nice. The Alabaster set, I will show you what the set bonus is here. If I can, there we go, I was on it. So at the start of combat, your power and critical strike are increased by 1% for every enemy you face when you start combat, to a max of 10%. So this is really good for clearing the waves as far as like the main phase of dungeons. Single target, when facing only one enemy, you get 5% for 1 minute. So if the boss lasts for more than 1 minute, A, your group is a little slow, and B, you're going to be having a drop off, which is fine. It's fine if your group is a little bit slower. The Arcturia fight, you're almost guaranteed for it to be longer than a minute because of the mechanics. Pretty much every fight is going to be longer than a minute, so the single target portion does fall off pretty heavily in these newer dungeons. So, but still better weapons than what we've had before. And then I'm still using the Primal Boots, just because for AoE, when you kill an enemy, gaining that 3% action points is huge. It's huge. Now when you go to single target, I just haven't got the boots that I need yet. But when you go to single target, there are some boots that give you like increased combat advantage or increased power when you're only facing one enemy. Those would be the way to go for single target. But for AoE, Primal Boots for us is kind of the way to go. And then we've got some huge stat sticks that we've got from the new artifacts. Really, really crazy. Like, and their increased item level as well, which item level isn't everything. But between those and then the new companion gear, it's really easy to cap your offensive stats. Or if you're a defensive player, it's really easy to cap your defensive stats. It's just trying to find that balance between the two on your back page or on your companion page that makes the difference. So Arcturia's music box, as you can see all the stats there. I'm still running the Orcus set. And then the Wyvern Venom Coated Knives. This you can get from basically running your MEs. You'll get Coalesced Magic, which is just like looks like a little pie, orange pie, in your Riches tab. And you can buy these. You can also get them as drops, but you can buy these just by running your MEs and doing the essence farming. And then obviously Staff of Flowers is a huge bump up. Now I will say that this is not best in slot. This is just what I'm running because I missed the Storyteller event. So the storybooks, running 3 or 4 storybooks is going to be the way because of how much stat and damage and HP and stuff you gain from having the storybooks, and what they do is just freaking crazy. But if you don't have access to the storybooks, this would most likely be a good setup. And I'm not sure when the storybook event is coming out again, so I'm highly anticipating that because I want to get that. So like I said, running the Orcus set, and running Radiance and pretty much everything, offense and defense. And then there are some new shirt and pant sets. So there are shirts that you can use. For me, as a control wizard, especially for AoE, because I'm still debating on whether I want to run Thom full time for AoE or not. But for me, running Thom, critically striking and having that chance to reduce my encounter power cooldowns because of how many numbers I see and how many crits there are, I'm almost always going to get that at least once or twice to reduce my cooldowns. So that makes it really nice. Now, if you're going to run Arcanist all the way, there are shirts that are less item level, but they give you, when your stamina is above 75%, you gain 3% damage. Just flat out 3% damage. And so they're a little bit less item level, a little bit less stat, but you gain that 3% damage. And then this one is basically almost the same set bonus as the one that was above, except instead of cooldown time, you're gaining action points, which action points for a control wizard means DPS. For some other classes, that's not necessarily true. Like, I guess with TRs it is, but you're not really using your dailies to deal the damage. You're using the dailies to like refresh your stealth, and to maybe gain power stacks. But for us, these are huge damage numbers, especially in AoE, because you're going to be casting your oppressive force, all that stuff. So action points is huge. And like I said, in my defensive slot, I do have something that's not a Radiant, but that's because it's just what I had lying around, so I didn't have to go buy anything. So obviously hit points. And then there are these new rings. The set bonus really doesn't affect me, or the equip bonus really doesn't affect me at all. Damage to beasts, like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's the stats that's huge. Getting almost 12,000 armor pen and almost 8,000 combat advantage is huge. And then this one is range powers deal 3% more damage. So it's the same as my shirt, but because it's X twice, no issues. Now you could put on 2 of these rings and use a different shirt, get some more stat, or you can mix and match like I'm doing here. And so even still, with this being a lower item level item, still 6,300 crit, 4,200 combat advantage. And then the demo set. So moving to the back page, as you can see, 331,000 power. With this, there is a debate right now of whether you should go into charisma or whether you should go into dex. In the current meta, the saying movimiento es vida, it's a Spanish saying, which means movement is life. Movement is DPS in the current meta. So having the increased movement speed and critical severity, especially in AoE, because you're going to be trying to outspeed barbs and outspeed HRs, which HRs have ridiculous movement because they've got like a 50 or 60 foot range on their Marauder's Rush. So you need to get there first, so you're never gonna deal damage. No one can out speed and out AoE a well geared barb. Just no one can keep up with that. And that's about really all those barbs are useful for at this point, unfortunately. For me, I stayed with Companion Influence, just because if I drop that off, like as you can see on my back page, I'm just below the defensive cap for Tom. If I took the Companion Influence off, I would drop about another 3,000, which I didn't want to do. So, I stayed with Charisma, and this is just a balancing act. If you get to the point where your stats look okay and you can afford to lose the Companion Influence, run up in Dex, get the extra crit severity, get the extra movement. Intelligence is going to be the way because everything we do is magic damage. So as far as stats, power is a little bit low for a DPS, but that's because I chose to take some power off of my equipped companions and put on companions that gave me HP. Obviously, this is still in flux. This is going to be an ever-changing thing, trying to stack up more power. And obviously, I only have rank 12s in my offense slots on my character, and I think I have rank 11s and 12s on my companion page, as far as the empowered runestones. So power will come regardless. And then I am overcapped on armor pen, a little bit undercapped on defense, overcapped on crit. Critical avoidance is low. That should come up to at least 70. Accuracy is a little bit low, but that's because of I gain accuracy through feats. Not 30,000 accuracy, but I do gain some accuracy through feats. And then combat advantage, the cap is like 130. So I'm right there. I'm not too worried about the extra 3,000 combat advantage. And then one of the big things that you're going to want, especially moving into mod 18, is going to be incoming healing. As you can see, I have none. I'm running darks in all of my stuff right now, but moving into mod 18, I will be running tacticals, which gives you the increased incoming healing. Because healing is a huge deal. And so having the healers not have to work as hard to heal you up, because you're increasing how much they can heal you for, makes a huge difference in the synergy with their group. And one thing I forgot to mention, two things. So Bark Shield is obviously still the way as a DPS, especially for Tom. You have to have a Bark Shield or you're not going to make it very far. And then I'm running a Holy Avenger right now, but that's just because I've been swapping enchantments around, so I just didn't want to not have an enchantment in when I was running stuff yesterday. Vorpal or Bilethorn. Those are the only two for DPS right now, Vorpal or Bilethorn. I have a Vorpal, it's on my Healadin. My Healadin needs it a little bit more. I still deal damage even with the Holy Avenger, so I'm not too worried about it right now. I'm on my Healadin more than I'm on my CW at this point, but so Bark Shield, Vorpal, or Bilethorn. And then as far as powers, for AoE, I'm running Icy Terrain, the Lightning Bolt, and this is in the Arcane set. Disintegrate is in my RB or on my tab if you're playing on PC, and then Slow Time. You could, in theory, swap Lightning Bolt and put on like Entangling Force. I just don't see a reason to put on another single target power when you're running AoE. It doesn't make sense to me. So you could run, as far as your dailies, Oppressive Force, Arcane Singularity, or Maelstrom. And I think this one was just equipped when I set up this loadout. I don't think I ever changed it. I just changed to Oppressive Force because I like what it does. I like the control of it. That it adds a daze and it kind of like pulls everybody in. So I like that a lot. And then here's one thing that changes a lot that we're not using Chilling Presence. We're not worried about chill stacks anymore. As far as with Arcanist, we're not worried about chill stacks. It's arcane stacks. So you're going to build your arcane stacks up, and then you're just going to electrocute everything. So you get a chance to throw lightning bolts at people when you attack them. It's pretty cool. And then as far as feats go, spell twisting. You gain a stack of spell twisting. When you use your encounter powers, when casting it at will, it removes a stack and you gain some of your action points back. Assailing force, your next encounter power will do double its initial damage. And then Shard of Endless Avalanche will double, but yeah, no one uses Shard of Endless Avalanche. So Assailing Force, just some extra damage, especially if you can time it perfectly to get like your Ray of Enfeeblement and your Repel or your Disintegrate off with Assailing Force active. It hits really, really hard. Really hard. And then this is kind of like the little, like, this used to be Master of Flame, but now they just put it in Arcanist as kind of like a, here, have a feat. So Chaos Magic, Power Surge, gain a 100% increase at will damage, Rapid Recovery, 100% cooldown recovery rate, and then Quick Action, gain 20% AP. I see Quick Action coming up a lot more than any of the others, I think. Maybe it's just because I'm keying on the Q on the screen more, but I see Quick Action pop up more often than others. And then Striking Advantage, dealing combat advantage, grants you a 20% chance to doing a lightning bolt. So more lightning. All the lightning. More lightning. And then this is why we're using the Arcane Mastery, Arcane stacks, because Arcane Mastery now stacks up to 10 times, grants an additional 1% damage per stack, and lasts for 10 seconds. So you gain, when you're at 10 stacks, you're running at 10% more damage, and every arcane power that you use refreshes the timer. So it just keeps you at 10 stacks. And then as far as boons, we'll just go through the guild because it's real easy. Power, HP, and then I use mount speed because we don't have revive sickness, and I just like to be able to move faster in zones. And then PvP, I don't really PvP, but this is the only one that we have, so that's why it's equipped. And then boons, I'm not going to go over everything. Basically, I just stacked up power because my other stats are capped. Loading up HP, and then as I said before, Movimiento es Vida, so taking the movement speed. Power, a little bit of combat advantage, but that's just because I had an extra point to throw somewhere, so I threw it in combat advantage. HP, power, HP, and then dealing damage to undead. The reason why I took that is because in almost every zone you're going to face undead, so more than others. Like if you're not in Cholt, you're not gonna really face dinosaurs. If you're not in, I mean, you could argue for demons too. Demons are pretty prevalent. But we see undead more than anything. And then this is debatable. You could take critical severity if you'd like, but I like having more action points and faster recharge speed, so you could essentially take the recharge speed off and put on critical severity, or if you feel like your action points are where they need to be, take the action points off and put on critical severity. That would be acceptable. That's the debate, at least for me right now. And then for AoE, you probably should be running Deathly Rage because you're killing things. I am running Bloodlust, so on encounter use, you gain these benefits, whereas with Deathly Rage, when you kill something, you have a chance to gain these benefits. So for AoE, you should probably be running Deathly Rage, but I basically just copied and pasted my Thom build from my other page to here. But Deathly Rage is kind of the way to go right now, as far as AoE goes, just because you, on killing things, you gain these stats where it's not like, oh, on a chance of one of your 3 encounter powers you could get one of these things. Companions, running the Bullite Pup, and then have the Baby Deep Crow, the I don't remember what that is, Iron Golem, but just gives me the HP and the defense. The Raptor, so gaining 1500 power now, but if you have a full group that's running this, that's some amount of power. 1500 times 5. Let's see, 3, 6, 7, 7500 power. And then just more HP and combat advantage, and then obviously just more HP. So you can see I sacrificed a lot of my offense slots and power to stack up the HP to where it needs to be, because power I can get other places. As far as equipment goes, rank 15 bondos. And then this is all going to be just what you need to make your stats work. Obviously I have 2 pieces that are not double slotted, which makes a huge difference because I have enchantments in my inventory waiting for when I find some double slotted gear. So basically just getting your stats to where they need to be so that you can be effective. So this gear is always kind of in flux for me because I'm always pushing, testing, making sure that I can do things better. And with running MEs and doing some other Undermountain content, you get new companion gear pretty often. So this can always change. And one thing that I will say, I know it's lower item level, but please, for the love of God, if you run through the Undermountain campaign, do not get rid of that platinum plated belt, because it is the only defensive statted companion gear with 2 offense slots in it. I sold mine. I needed defense. Now I'm stuck with a stupid single defense slot on my companion page. So don't sell that belt, even though it's lower item level. If you need defense, equip it, and you can at least throw some power in it. And the reason why, excuse me, we're using the Boule Pup is because of this right here. Gives an additional bonus to combat advantage, defense, and power. So all the things that DPS need, and especially defense, most DPS need help getting that defense up to where it needs to be. So as far as the equipment and everything goes, that's basically it for those. But potency is something that I'm using because I'm running lower on power. So when I engage in battle, I have a chance to gain that extra 2000 power, which isn't a huge damage or power spike, but it still helps. I mean, it's still, I can see a difference when that 2000 power is on as opposed to when it's off. So with that, potency is kind of the way to go. You can select these and you can scroll through this page, figure out what you need, figure out what's going to work best for you. And then as far as mounts go, pretty much I haven't optimized this. I haven't optimized this at all, but Assassin's Covenant really isn't worth anything anymore, just because only gaining 1000 accuracy, armor pen, crit strike, and combat advantage, I'm already basically capped in all of those things except for accuracy. So the meta right now is running 3 Gladiators Guiles and then 2 just whatever you want or whatever you need. And so for me, I would probably I'm going to swap out Assassin's Covenant for a Gladiator's Guile. I will probably end up swapping this because running Arcanist, you don't crit as often. You don't get the big rolling crits like you do with Thom. And so I'll probably make that into a Gladiator's Guile, and then I will keep Shepherds and Combatant's Maneuver because as wizards we control enemies, so it just gives us combat advantage. And then insignias, my insignias are all over the place because I kind of just equip what I get. I've been dumping everything into my Helidin because they are very much wanted and needed, but you can use these as little stat sticks as well to get your stats to where they need to be. But for the most part, you should be looking at either Brutals or Dominance, because Brutals gives you the power, and then Dominance gives you power and companion influence. and then if you have extras, run prosperity to give you more HP. So at least that was the Arcanist AoE loadout. We will go over the single target loadout right now, and I'm not going to do the Thom loadout just because it's not the way anymore. I'm just going to show you what basically the current meta is. So obviously with this one I lose a little bit of stat because I take off the Staff of Flowers for the Soul Sight Crystal, but basically everything else stays the same. All the gear stays the same, just putting on Soul Sight. Stats relatively the same, nothing really changed. I believe on this one I did put mine into Dex. I did, and that's just because for single target I just wanted to hit as hard as I possibly could. So I wanted the extra crit severity, I wanted the movement speed, I wanted to be able to hit as hard as I possibly could. So powers, Ray of Frost on the right trigger or as your main at will, and then Arcane Bolt as your secondary. I rarely use the Arcane Bolt because it's so slow for casting speed, but basically you're running Entangling Force, Disintegrate, Repel, and Ray of Enfeeblement on your right bumper or your tab if you're playing on PC. And then the reason why this works so well, you're almost never going to use Ice Knife. You're going to use Arcane Empowerment. Because what this does is you deal 10% more damage, but your stuff is on like a 1 second cooldown. Your encounter powers is on like a 1 second cooldown for 10 seconds. So basically what you do is you go through about one rotation of your powers. If you have your daily ready, you go through one rotation of your powers, pop Soul Sight, pop your daily, and then you're just smashing. Like you're literally just hitting stuff as it comes up. Now obviously you want to hit ROE to go before your biggest hitting ability, so either Disintegrate or Repel. As the HP dwindles, you definitely want to try an ROE for Disintegrate because Disintegrate deals more damage as the HP is lower. But yeah, you're basically just spamming your encounter powers because they have a 1 second cooldown. So it gets pretty stupidly ridiculous. And then this is the little bit of difference here is Storm Spell. So we're keeping the lightning bolts, but we're also getting Arcane Power Field. So when we activate our daily, it doubles the damage bonus that we get from our mastery stacks. And then you deal like a little like burn damage to the stuff that's around you. Which if you're close enough to the boss, which most of the time as control wizards we're like right up in that, you're dealing damage ticks with that for 8 seconds as well. The feats didn't really change from the Arcanist AoE to Arcanist single target. It was really just the artifacts and eventually, like if I get the boots and and then there's another helmet that does pretty much the same thing as when you're fighting one enemy, you gain extra stats. Might jump to that helmet or when I get the boots, just so that I don't have to swap things myself. I can just go to a campfire, switch to this loadout, and it has everything there, and it pulls my Soul Sight on and off for that. And then boons are going to be basically the same. I did more accuracy. Instead I did the 1 point accuracy rather than the combat advantage on this one. And then obviously Bloodlust, because we're gonna be spamming encounter powers, so you're gonna get those extra bonuses pretty consistently. But yeah, basically power and HP, a little bit of movement speed, and then everything else is the same. Companions are going to be the same. Mounts are going to be the same. So really the biggest difference is going to be the couple pieces of gear. So Soul Sight and the boots, if you get the boots, that give you the bonus against fighting one enemy. And then you would just have to weigh your damage. It's just going to take some testing of whether you can pull that hat off that has the 5% increased damage for Undermountain, or if you want to take the one that has the single target stat boost. But it's all pretty much the same. Really simple, really easy. A lot of this is all transferable back and forth across pretty much any platform, any loadout, and